Welcome to another CEO Wisdom podcast. We have Rish Gupta with us today. He's co-founder and CEO at Spot AI. He's in SF. I'm in Oaxaca, Mexico. Spot.ai is a video intelligence company backed by some of the world's best investors. It's quite interesting. They raised a Series B of 40 million not so long ago. We're going to talk about what they do, and it's going to be pretty fun because Rish has been in product for quite some time as well. It's not his first startup. Has a cool background, Stanford educated, my type of guys. It's going to be a fun one today. Podpire is presenting this podcast. If you think of starting a podcast to generate leads, connections, authority, and neurons in your brain, you can go to podpire.com. We have a free ebook, a masterclass for you to follow there, and that is all free. So podpire.com for that. Rish, should I say, welcome to the pod. Tell me a bit more about yourself and what you're up to nowadays.
Thanks, Charles. Thanks for having me. I think we covered a little bit of it from the professional background. So, for the last 5 years, we've been building Spot AI, which has been really, really exciting. It's a company in the video intelligence space. We do a bunch of cool stuff with cameras and enterprises. Apart from that, I think a lot of people like San Francisco is a great place for nature, so enjoy biking, running, being outdoors. Plus, it has a good music scene, which is always a good de-stressor after a long work week.
There you go. And how did you get into startups? So you were in product at some point. You had another startup that you co-founded before that. How did you get into Spot?
Yeah, it's a good question. So for me, the journey kind of started at a very young age. I don't know. I think you meet two kinds of founders, entrepreneurs. Some people who, from a very young age, wanted to find a company and then kept looking for problems that can excite them. Some people start with being really excited about a problem and then being like, nobody else is doing it in a unique way, and then they become entrepreneurs to solve that problem. So for me, it was more the first kind of had this inkling to start something, to do something independently right from a very young age. So I think I started my first company when I did some two companies in the undergrad, kind of like side hustles. One of them worked, one of them didn't work, made some money, then got out of college, started my first company in India when I was living there in Bombay and Delhi. It was a company which connected college students to companies, built the largest kind of internship/work platform for students. So that grew to about 4 million users, sold in 2015. And that was also around the time that I decided to move to San Francisco.
Interesting. And Spot, basically where the idea came from. And if you could tell us what the software does precisely and the AI component could be cool.
Yeah. So let me just start with what we do. That'll explain the origin of the idea a lot better. So we have there are about 100 million cameras deployed across US businesses. These cameras predominantly have legacy software, require a desktop application to access them. And max you can do is kind of scrub through the video to find something. We think of these 100 million cameras within enterprises as sources of video data. So we mine these video footage for actionable insights and analytics and easy access. So if you're a retail customer with a drive-through restaurant, you will know how many cars are passing through, what's the average wait time of each car. We can give you that. How many people are walking in and out of your store in a retail environment? Is there a customer waiting when there's nobody behind the counter? We can inform you how many times did it happen in a day, what percentage of time is the customer waiting. If you're a manufacturing unit, everything from safety, if people are wearing protective equipment, so think of anything that an eyesight is somebody with a clipboard or visual inspection can do. We can automate it at the camera layer and make the data available. We have 1,000 different customers across the United States which use us. So that's that's what we do. We make video data extremely useful for businesses, and anybody with physical operation benefits from it.
Right, and you have this AI component. At first, I would guess you need to teach a specific use case for the AI, right? Like a fall detected, or this guy is hanging around with his car, potentially wanting to rob your business, or missing PPE, for example. So you have all these cases that you first feed the AI, then how does that AI actually detect that it's really like this guy jumping my fence? How does it know?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's the methods in which we've solved this problem has evolved as AI has evolved over the last 5 years. The device started with these are very simple object detection problems. So we started with more simple analytics: the number of people, how many people are present in certain zone, if a person is uh, if a person is too close to a machine, if there's a vehicle, what the license plate is, facial recognition, gun detection, and kind of things like. But these are very object classification and detections. Then we started doing relationships with objects. So if you can understand a fence, so there are segment anything models and stuff which you can understand everything that's happening in a video. You can understand every static element in a video, so you know what a fence is, what a refrigerator is, what a door handle is, and then you can understand. And if you understand the other object, you can understand relationships between them. So if I understand this is a fence and you're over the fence, then you're jumping the fence most likely. So then you start using object and understanding of context and start building relationships with them. And then there's the third level, which has been made possible in the last year. The context windows have become bigger. The large language models have become more sophisticated. Where if you tell it, if you're able to deploy it on the edge and train it on the video pipeline, then if you tell me when there's a fence jumping, the model automatically understands what fence jumping is, what a fence is, and what jumping looks like, and there's a human being. So you no longer have to define these relationships. The model does it for you. So yeah, it's been an evolution of different technologies over the years.
And are there humans telling the model that this is really someone jumping and not just a kid jumping in front of the fence?
So no, you don't have humans in the loop in our process. We are able to automate uh, all the way. And now, obviously, that means that you will be having some false positive and some false negatives. Normally, in most cases, we operate in the high 90s of accuracy. And then what we look for is customers to provide a feedback. So in our product, customers can, if let's say we say this is a fence jumping video, and the person looks at the video and says, no, this was just a kid playing around the fence and was trying to scale the fence and then jump back. There's actually no security threat here. They can tag it as no. Or the person was jumping way ahead of the fence, but somehow the video picked it up as in the same two-dimensional space. And that is a mistake. It can, again, they can say no, and all of that data then helps our model get better.
Right. And any types of camera that I have is connectable to your software or only some specific brands?
Yeah, it's a very good question. This goes back to the thesis of the company that if you want to become the largest video data company, you want to be able to access the largest sources of video data. So we are video source agnostic. So as long as you have an internet connected camera, any IP camera, 99.9% will be able to talk to it and get the video off it.
Okay, very cool. And what's the cost of that? And how much can I save as a manufacturing potential clients of yours, for example?
In terms of the impact of the solution?
Yes, and the cost.
Yeah. It can cost anywhere from a cost perspective, customers pay based on the number of camera feeds they're processing through our system. So if you have a retail chain with just 20 cameras, you pay much lesser. In a small retail, let's say gas station outlet, if you're a bigger retail chain, you probably have a few hundred cameras. If you're a massive manufacturing plant, you might have 400 or 500 cameras. If you're in an airport, you have 5,000 cameras. So then you pay differently depending on what the density of camera is. But for an average location, customers will pay anywhere between $1,000 to $10,000 per location, depending on the camera density. And the second point of how much are they able to save or what the value impact is. On operational use cases, we're normally able to see that once they have video data, it's like somebody watching every bit of your operation and giving you insights into it. Imagine you're a person constantly watching how many people are entering on time and doing this X process on time and not wasting additional steps and not being there on their in a production line when they're supposed to be. There's no delays. When those kind of things happen, they normally see 2 to 5% of production lines, and normally, depending on how much they're producing, if they're producing a few $10 million of goods in that factory, it could be a few $100,000 to as much as tens of millions of dollars every year that the impact can be. And same thing in retail. Normally, it's either loss prevention or revenue maximization, depending on how they set up the systems. So we see normally a 5 to 10x ROI return at least once this data is flowing through the system.
And how far can I go in prompting this AI? Or can I even prompt it to be like, is the manufacturing chain rolling the right way? Is everything on time? Can you see the amounts of bottles going in that box? How far can I prompt the AI, and would there be a day in which the AI could just do all of that automatically? Like, you are my operations manager, you oversee everything. Just tell me how we could optimize the process.
So that's a really good question. It can definitely act like today with the latest models and the AI agents. We were one of the first companies to do video AI agents and a video RAG model on enterprise cameras. And we had to build a bunch of stack for that, how to get these models to perform on the edge with enterprise privacy, enterprise level accuracy, on large enough context windows as video, because they need to understand something happening over 10 hours and not just in the last 5 minutes. It's not like a quick query that you shot. It needs to have a really large context window. So it can act like a junior employee. It can act like a junior safety manager, and you can be like, hey, these are 7 things I care about violation wise. Emergency exit door being blocked, somebody not wearing a safety glasses, somebody not wearing a safety hat, or somebody jumping on top of a forklift. We have videos of that. It's absolutely hilarious when people find that. I can actually show you one if you want. And the other is on the operations side, as long as it's visible, we can improve a lot. And the best thing is you can upload. So imagine you have a standard operating procedure on a machine or a factory, change it like on a production line. You can upload your standard operating procedure and processes as PDF documents and past reports and for the last 2 years into our model. And the model will automatically now compare everything that's happening in your factory to your standard operating procedures and output out a report, which is what's the deviation from your standard operating procedures? What is the anomaly? Which part of process is taking more time? When it comes down to the last bit, which you asked, which is like, oh, can I look at the number of bottles that's going in and the number? We can do counts and stuff, but what happens is normally the cameras are on the ceiling, and if your quality production line is really low down and you're now trying to look for minute things, it's difficult. But when you're looking at large object movements and people movements and anything to do with process movements or where they're touching the machine, where they're not, those are very easy to do. If you place cameras more closer to the ground, which a lot of companies are willing to, then you can do a lot more with these cameras.
Right. And okay, the company, you've raised a bunch of money this year. What are your top priorities? And what is your specific role also in the company? Because you've been CPO at some point, you were COO at some point, now you're CEO. What has changed exactly?
Yeah, I mean, as a co-founder, your role always is thinking about only 2 things. One is how do you get amazing people into the company, and how do you get your product to an amazing set of customers fast enough, because that grows revenue, that grows customer count, that shows growth, and then it's all about the people you hire and the team that you build with. So those are kind of your top priorities, and that has always been constant within the realms of operations. My focus, when we initially started as co-founders, I was very focused on product and engineering in the early days, getting it out of the hand. At some point, I looked more into the sales side of operations about 2 years ago. So that was across product and sales, and that was kind of more the chief CEO role. And then over the last year, kind of transitioned with the CEO role as my co-founder we kind of swapped roles between us. And that has meant spending more time externally with investors, as well as thinking more long term. So you rather than just thinking what's happening in the next 6 months, 1 year, you start thinking about, okay, what are the bets over the next 2 years we need to make, and what do I need to learn for that?
Right. And on the sales side, how do you get in touch with your potential clients? What are your best performing channels?
That's a good question. I think Google still is a great channel. LinkedIn is another excellent channel. Word of mouth, a lot of referrals happen for us, which has been really, really good. Our customers have a very high NPS score, high retention scores. And so that's always been good for us. Then you have the smattering of events, outbound uh, motion, which kind of, and channel as well.
Right. Uh, I'm looking at some of your posts and some of your musings on your website. Tell me about like your personal objectives and the 5 minute mile. I think you're attempting that.
I'm not attempting a
What's
5 minute mile. I've been a runner. I've done, I think, more than a dozen marathons. The concept of 5 minute mile is if you tell somebody who's a decent runner to run a 6 minute mile, it's very much within reach. You're going to do incremental stuff. You're going to go out and train a little harder. You're going to sleep a little better. You're going to stretch out a little more, do some strength training. But if in the same time you have to run a 5 minute mile, you have to just do a completely, like, you can't do the same set of things and just do them little more or better. You have to do completely different set of things, and it's a very, very competitive kind of mile time to break. So the idea is to apply when you're doing things, when you think about how fast can you grow in sales or in product or anything, constantly think what's the 5 minute mile equivalent of that, running that would look like, and try to uphold yourself to that standard. So yeah, it's just a mental framework to how to think different or bigger.
right? And what is specifically your 5 minute miles in your industry? Because I think you're one of the biggest right now. And the more you scale, the harder it gets, sort of. So, what would be your 10x, your 100x framework?
Yeah, I think for us, it's last year the 5 minute mile was how do we build, how do we, in our AI part of the product, how do we go way ahead than anybody else's? So as I said at the beginning, like, we were the first ones to build video AI agents. We're the first one to build a video RAG model on enterprise cameras. And doing some of those first has allowed us to do things which others cannot do. And so last year's 10x was having a product portfolio and an AI story, which is just better by magnitude than any other player, where everybody else is talking about object detection and license plate reading. We're like, no, our agents can go and do things for you, can act as like your junior employees and use, it's almost like you're taking agents out of the digital realm of ChatGPT and Anthropic and into the physical world with a set of eyes, right? Like, now these agents can see things and they have all the brains of a ChatGPT or an Anthropic or a Gemini, but now they can see things in the physical world, and they can learn from everything happening in that factory setting or retail and apply to it. So it's that's really promising. And that was the last year's 5 minute mile. This year's 5 minute mile is, I think we have a unique window where our customer sizes are going from a lot of small to medium businesses across the United States to Fortune 500,000 companies. Like, we're starting to get pulled from really large companies. And this is the 5 minute mile is to learn how to be in the big boys club, like how to sell to them, how to, yeah.
Do you think that for AGI to happen, AI will need a set of eyes and understand the visual reality of this world, if we can even call this reality?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an AGI expert by any means, but if talking to people and being in San Francisco, like, and obviously being in the AI space deeply, if you understand AGI through reasoning or through creativity, like, what is the limits of AGI? Is it understanding? Is it reasoning? Is it creativity? Like, can it create original thoughts? So if you really go on to kind of original thoughts, I do think that as human beings, we consume 86% of our world through our eyes. So if you took your eyesight away, your perception of the world dramatically diminishes, right? And so to me, the perception window of AI dramatically improves, and the number of things it can learn, it can dramatically improve with eyes. And I think the closest thing to AGI, or what looks AGI like, is self-driving cars today. Like, you have a car which can make decisions, which can just drive, can go fast, can go slow, can decide between hitting into a car or a bicycle pedestrian. Like, it has to make these choices and is able to make those choices. And I know there's a lot of reasoning layer built in. It's not really creative at this point, but I think that is the most advanced application of AI that we see around us. Yeah, and that has eye, that has cameras, and that has radar kind of feeding into it. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, a digital worker closest version of AI is just like a ChatGPT. It's interesting or perception depending on how we spend our days, right? Or biased realities. I also think that yeah, for original thoughts. Yeah, probably can create a bunch of original thoughts. It would be nice if it could test them and their scientific validity because it can have a bunch of original thoughts that don't make any sense, right? Like most artists, I would
Sure.
argue. Um, and yet like how can it discover new fields, new sciences? Can it do it fully online, or does it need physical data? Because if it does it in a computational realm, it still needs some laws that govern this realm, right?
So the yeah, I mean, as I said, like there's multiple different approaches to AGI, and like I'm not a deep expert in how people are trying to break that. I'm more interested in the application layer, what exists. But to me, the if it is the creativity layer, and if it is the fact that even if the initial thought creates, it can create a lot of hallucination or a lot of unbounded creativity, which does not follow any law of physics or any law of gravity or any law of biology. And I think that's okay because imagination has to start at that place and then get bounded rather than start at the bounded place and then go unbounded. So and it's a lot easier when you have rich data sources which are unstructured rather than just structured database data if you want creativity. Like if I fed you all your information about life just through databases, and all you lived is in an Excel file, and you never saw the world outside of an Excel file, and everything is just a number to you, and it's, I do think that your understanding of the world your creativity will be rather limited. Uh,
Right.
yeah.
Just that we don't want to release it out there. It's like too
Correct.
uncertain of what would happen. Are you still investing as part of the Explorer Fund? Tell us a bit
Yes.
more about that.
Yeah. So me and a couple of the founders, after selling my last startup, started investing in early stage, like super early stage, when people are raising the first million. And it's less about wanting to be an investor, more about trying to be around other founders, which is one of the most exciting things, is people who are building, creating their own things. So yeah, the Explorer Fund is a like kind of a side gig by me and a few other founder friends. There's three other founder friends who all we together invest in startups. I think over the last 2 years, we've invested in about 15 companies, alongside some of the best VCs here. Yeah, super early stage. Yeah.
And these are friends, and seems you all have in common sports, right? Like, how do you bring that sports mentality to Spot?
Yeah, I mean, it's goes back to the 5 minute mile question. I think if you're into sports, you think like an athlete, and you get up and you're like, okay, what needs to get done, and then you think like, yeah, I think you just think of things of sport has two things. One is there's a goal always associated with it, and normally it's a hard goal that you want to go and achieve. And B, it's a team. Most likely, it's some kind of a social competitive element to it. Even if you're doing individual sports like running, you're trying to race 5Ks, 10Ks, marathons around other people. If you're playing tennis or paddle or any other game, you're just playing with other people. And I think business tends to be a combination of competition, social, goal orientation. So I don't know. And the four of us who do investing together became friends because of sports. We didn't become friends and then got into sports. We had similar interests in mountaineering, in running, and other things. And so we would go out and do those things. And then we also had interest in entrepreneurship and had built and sold companies. So we're like, okay, we seem to enjoy the same things. We love spending time with each other, invest together.
Seems art also is a common theme I see amongst you and some of your co-investors slash friends there. You and I, we love similar music. I see Carl Cox here. I see Yodo. I see
Yeah,
Jan Blomkis, or however we
yeah,
pronounce his name. You've been to Burning Man and all of that. Like, what
yeah.
is your relationship with music? For example, me, I always listen to some electro or some Burning Man sets while I'm working, but also while relaxing. I mean, music is an integrational part of my life. I don't know what I would be without music. How do you perceive music, and do you always listen to music while you work?
I almost always listen to music while I work, while I run, while I bike. Biking is probably not safe to listen to music, but I do enjoy it. yeah, I think my relation with music, it's probably in that post as well, which is, I think for a lot of men specifically, a language of emotion is sometimes missing, and how to express emotions. And I think listening to music and getting really absorbed in it is one of the best ways to feel it, sometimes express it, and especially when you go out dancing to a great set or a great artist with your friends, it is also a very emotional experience in some ways. You feel very connected, and yeah, to me, it's a language of emotions which I don't have access to otherwise. Which, yeah.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for coming on today, Rish. Where can people find out more about you?
I mean, more than me, I think people should find out about Spot, because that's what we spend all our time doing. So I think our website is spotai.co or spot.ai. Either one will get you to what we do. And then, yeah, and if you want to find me, I'm on Twitter. And if you search Spot AI, you'll find me.
So that was Rish Gupta and Charles Cormier for another CEO